to it because I've been in the comments on those last two videos that I live streams, and you guys really want to know the truth. So basically, there's a mass exodus going on the Democratic Party, and we are on the road to ending slavery. Yes. Okay. If you didn't know, Prop 6 in California ends slavery in California, and it aligns with the national efforts to amend the 13th Amendment to get decriminalization off of the Constitution. So I'm going to be talking this morning. We're going to communicate because knowledge is power. We got to have these conversations. There's no way we can actually not come together and understand as people what we need to do to really fix this old wicked world. And big up to, prayers are out to the individuals in the Florida area with Hurricane Milton. The aftermath is in play. The cleanup is in play. And right now we're really starting to understand that there are some things that we need to do as a people and come together as a people. So I decided to educate, and I call it edutainment because a lot of the things that we go through in life, we really don't know that a lot of times the truth is hidden in plain sight. Because when they say, we're still slaves or we're on the road to end slavery, there's a mass democratic exodus, it's because it's the truth. And it dates back a very time. It's based in the Constitution. And a lot of times we as people, as African Americans, as blacks in the United States, we think that, we're equal. But how can you be equal when there's slavery clause, when laws in the Constitution on the federal and the state level? So I'm bringing receipts today. So if you got any questions or concerns, put it in the comments because we seek solutions and resolutions to create a better world. OK, and we're here in America and we're still dealing with issues that's been on the books for over 160 years. The Emancipation Proclamation was signed in 1865. But then after 1865, they came up with these with the Vagrancy Acts. OK. And I'm going to go ahead and give you some receipts. And it's the Vagrancy Act of 1866. The Act of 1866 is the catalyst. OK. Because after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed in December of 1865, December, the 12th month, Abraham Lincoln obviously was assassinated. He was assassinated. And then in January 15th of 1866, just a few weeks later after his assassination, the House of Congress passed the Vagrancy Act of 1866. So think about it. Abraham Lincoln emancipated the slaves, the newly freed slaves. He was assassinated, and then they put a slavery clause on the Constitution within weeks of the emancipation, and it's still on the books today, and it's the Vagrancy Act of 1866. And I'm going to go ahead and read a portion of it, which is very important because we need to understand why our spirit is having us move away from democracy or their democracy, or more importantly, the Democratic Party, is because time's up. All of these issues that's going on in mainstream media with the celebrities and the Time's Up and Me Too, those are smoke screens and things that are used to distract us. But as a people, we're going to keep this same energy and we're going to basically liberate all of humanity, not just, women or people who've been violated and been participating. And then all of a sudden it's a big issue now. So we're not going to get into that today, but we're going to really talk about the truth. So the mass exodus. Think about this. Just get your minds right. I'm going to drop some bombshells on you right now. OK, I'm going to give you some receipts and some facts. And like I said, if you got any questions or concerns, throw them in the comments. I'm pretty candid. I love reading them. And think about it. In 1865, the 13th Amendment was signed. OK, and the 13th Amendment read neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. And that's pretty much read off of congress.gov. Okay, the United States Constitution, the 13th Amendment says neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as for a crime whereof the party shall be duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. That's the 13th Amendment that pretty much went on the books when Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation 1865 in December. Okay. Now, after his assassination, not even a month later, Congress passes the Vagrancy Act of 1866. And the Act of 1866 reads, okay, the Vagrancy Act 1866 passed by General Assembly on January 15th, less than a month later, 1866, forced into employment for the term months any person who appeared to be unemployed or homeless. And just mind you that slaves were just newly freed. So they were unemployed and they were homeless. And the reading says appeared. So appearance is everything. So anybody that's black. If so, vagrants ran away and were recaptured, they would be forced to work for no compensation while wearing balls and chains. I'm going to say this again. They will work without compensation wearing balls and chains. So remember, as kids, we will watch Bugs Bunny. They'll have the ball and chains. This is on the United States Constitution on the books still to this day. And this is why we got to vote yes on Prop 6. It's crazy that this is the Vagrancy Act of 1866, and Proposition 6 is the bill in the state of California that would basically end slavery in the state of California. So think about it. So if so-called vagrants ran away, they were recaptured, they would be forced to work for no compensation while wearing balls and chains. More formally known as the Act Providing for Punishment of Vagrants. The law came shortly after the Civil War. Okay. And the Civil War lasted from 1861 to 1865, when hundreds of thousands of African Americans, many of them just freed from slavery, wandered in search for work, displaced family members, and such the act of criminalization freed people attempted to rebuild their lives and perhaps was intended to contradict, the status quo. So think about it. The newly freed slaves were figuring out, trying to wonder where they're going to live. They're looking for loved ones, looking to reconnect, and pretty much appeared homeless, documented in terms of in the state legislature, in the General Assembly, and pretty much we're still dealing with this today. So when you go to the California Proposition 6, and Proposition 6 in California, the argument is Proposition 6 ends slavery in California and upholds human rights and dignity for everyone. So think about it. We're in 2024. The Democratic Party is the party of slavery. We all know this, okay? But somehow we want to have debates and argue and say that they switched. They never switched. The Democratic Party owns the black race. This is why the ghettos were created. This is why mass incarceration was created. This is how America profits off of a particular group of people. And it's crazy that we're sitting here in 2024 with a proposition in California that ends slavery and uphold human rights and dignity for everyone. But we don't have any of our elected officials or politicians having this conversation. So this is why we got to rise above and understand that this is one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And this is why we have to embrace that Constitution and understand and truly understand, that we, the people, okay, this is not a democracy. America is a constitutional republic. Okay. It's not a democracy. And this is, really, something that we have to understand. And hey, how you doing? Let me see here for talking about this. Listen, this is our moment in time to shine. That is M. This is our moment in time. This is our moment to shine, M. And in the history books, our children's children are going to look back and say, wow, in 2024, a group of people rose up beyond the madness in the United States and decided to pretty much go and take a deep dive into the documentation, into the slavery clauses, into all of these things to actually free and liberate God's people, because we're all God's people, and end racism in the United States. Because if we can pull this off, or I would say when we pull this off, then we're going to have to find put policy books to basically bring us together and support and respect everyone, because in the state of California, Proposition 6 ends slavery in California and upholds human rights and dignity for everyone. So that means the federal government got to hold human rights and dignity for everyone. But according to the documentation, Constitution, this is not a practicing principle because of massive incarceration, involuntary servitude in the prisons, and just pretty much the Kerner report or the Kerner Commission stated that they created these ghettos so they can actually continue to profit off of these things. So, and it's crazy. So hello to you. We got Tony down in Brazil. Salute to you, my brother from Brazil. Okay, and Uncle Ruck. Good morning to you. So listen, if you guys got any comments, okay, I'm gonna be on for a little while today. Any questions that you really been thinking about, now is the time, because God's people shall not perish due to the lack of knowledge. And we really got to have these conversations because it's crazy. On a daily basis, I talk to Black individuals, okay, and I sit back and, we have these conversations, and I'll be lobbying for a yes vote for Proposition 6, which would actually end slavery in the state of California. And they'll look at me and sit back and say, I ain't no slave. I'm like, yes, you a slave. I'm a slave. Your mama a slave. They get offended, but then I'm walking around with my ballot, with my book, and I show them directly in the book, and they sit back and say, wow. And then I ask the question, so if Proposition 6 ends slavery in California and upholds human rights and dignity for everyone, then what does that mean? And then they'll have to sit back and be honest with themselves and say, that mean, I guess we still slaves. Okay, but then they'll sit back and say, I'm a child of God and I'm this and I'm that. But I'm saying, listen, our framers framed us. Okay, so when the Democratic Party talks about Donald Trump's a threat to our democracy, no, the truth is a threat to your democracy, because according to the word of God, the truth shall make us free, not set us free. That's the CIA. The truth shall make us free. So this is why we're dealing with what we're dealing with today. And in plain sight, with these criminalization clauses that I share with you, and I will continue to share because people are jumping on right now, you can see how P. Diddy, Sean Puffy Combs, went from being a rich man to a slave. This man had mansions. His home in Homely Hills is on sale right now for $60 million. And now, all of a sudden, with the criminalization clause in the Constitution, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime whereby the party shall be duly convicted. He's not even convicted, and he's being treated as a slave because he's not even, they won't even accept this $50 million in terms of. So this is crazy. This is crazy. Let me see here. Fact woke to 420. Wow. You are a slave. Yes, I am. You are broadcasting from a slave quarters. Yes, I am. And until we support and vote Proposition 6 in California, and I'm reading this right off the ballot, Proposition 6 end slavery in California and uphold human rights and dignity for everyone. So that's actually a true fact. Yes, you looking at a slave, talking to a slave. I'm not in the slave quarters because I'm totally independent. Okay. But at the end of the day, individuals might be at work. Okay. On the clock, looking at this, and they're literally, on a plantation now looking at a slave, because it is what it is. Because like I said, America needs to, understand and atone for how bad she has truly been to God's people. When I say God's people, I mean all people. Okay. I'm not just saying Black people in general, because by default, you have, the brown community, the Latinos, you have poor whites. They're literally federal prisons right now doing involuntary servitude. So they're technically operating as slaves as well. But when you're white or Caucasian, they say it's a class thing. But for us, based on the Vagrancy Act of 1866, it basically any person who appeared to be unemployed or homeless. So if you appear to be unemployed or homeless. So for number one, we look different. We're Black, okay, in terms of our melanation and our skin, and appear to be homeless. We were just freed a month ago. So now we're trying to figure this thing out. So we're searching for family members. We're searching for a new way of life. And all of a sudden, based on the Vagrancy Act of 1866, that basically went into fruition less than literally half a month or 2 weeks away from the Emancipation Proclamation, they pretty much put balls and chains on newly freed slaves, and they pretty much got to work. And we haven't addressed any of these issues until now, because with civil rights and all of that, it was just, they played us on that. Nothing changed. They didn't change the Constitution. They didn't put measures on the ballot to actually end slavery. They just pretty much included us and gave us opportunities, some of us. And it basically, this is the first time we can have this conversation, because if so-called vagrants ran away and were recaptured, they were forced to work for no compensation. And this is on the book, the Vagrancy Act of 1866, wearing a ball and chain. So when I used to watch Bugs Bunny and they were walking around with balls and chains, I didn't know they were mocking and making, mockery and basically telling the truth. So if you look at those Disney cartoons from back in the day, it tell a whole bunch of truths in there. And it's crazy how in 2024, we're the only generation really have this conversation. I've never seen this conversation before. It's been resonating in my spirit. And I could search YouTube, I could go on TV, look at a documentary, but I've never in my adult life, any school or anything, have learned or understand anything about this. And Willie Lynch would be upset because he said that they could run this game for hundreds, if not thousands of years. That's the Willie Lynch. He said they could run this for hundreds, if not thousands of years, unless a phenomenon happened. And that phenomenon is actually the internet. Okay, the information superhighway, so we can actually take a deep dive and figure these things out and have these real conversations, because it is what it is. So let me see. Rayon basically said, "Hey, what are we talking about?" I'm talking about freedom. Okay, if you saw the, I wouldn't say clickbait, but if you saw the caption, it says the Democratic Exodus, the road to slavery. I'm pretty much breaking it down because in the state of California, and I'm talking to Rayon. California put on the ballot Proposition 6, and nobody's talking about it. And Proposition 6 ends slavery in California and upholds human rights and dignity for everyone. And the big picture is that it wants to align with the national efforts to reform the 13th Amendment. Okay, and then the 13th Amendment reads, neither slavery nor servitude except for punishment for a crime. So that's a criminalization clause in the Constitution. So apparently, you're looking at a slave right now, literally documented on the books. And this is why, we're only 6% of the world, but 60% of the mass incarceration or human beings behind bars. And this is why in the black community, 6 out of 10 black men will find themselves behind bars in a municipal, state, or federal prison, because it's big profit. Okay. Because we're basically, for the first time in our lifetime, are taking on the challenge to actually end slavery in the United States. And this is crazy. Let me see here. We should write in the ballot measures, if enough people write a code for the website where anyone can post the measure idea. See, basically what you're saying, and that's ACK. Hey, you guys got some crazy names on the internet. But listen, this is what we're trying to. But the only way we could do this, and if you're in the state of California, is pretty much voted yes on Proposition 6 to end slavery so we can have a conversation. And we have to push this measure on the federal level, because Proposition 6 as a whole, neither slavery, ends slavery in California and upholds human rights and dignity for everyone. It replaces, let me see here, where is it at? Okay, and it aligns with the national effort to reform the 13th Amendment, and that's the federal level. So if we could do this in California, then we'll have an opportunity to go for a constitutional amendment. And once it's changed in the Constitution, and the title of the Constitution says "We the People," then we can have an opportunity to do what we need to do. But this is why we can't have a duopoly, which is a two-party system, Democrats and Republicans. This is why I'm saying, from a prophetic perspective, that there's a mass exodus in the Democratic Party. It's the Democratic Party who is pretty much keeping these things into play, because they are the party of slavery. They are the party of Jim Crow. They are the party who assassinated the Republican president who signed the Emancipation Proclamation, which was Abraham Lincoln. And within 2 weeks later, they put the Vagrancy Act of 1866, and the Vagrancy Act of 1866 passed by General Assembly on January 15th in 1866, forced into employment for the term of 3 months for any person who appeared to be unemployed. If so, Vagrants ran away and were recaptured, and they were forced to work without no compensation while wearing a ball and chain. And this is why they would have Kamala Harris saying, we're not going to go back, because if you go back, you got to go back to where it all went wrong. You got to go back to where the framers and the Democrats and the Dixiecrats and the Confederates pretty much framed an entire group of people and supposedly ended slavery, but pretty much documented and put it on the books and made it law. So if we're seeking a constitutional amendment and Proposition 6 is on the ballots, and Proposition 6 in California ends slavery in California and upholds human rights and dignity for everyone, then slavery must still be in existence to this day. This is crazy. This is crazy. Let me see. I'm sure the Vagrancy Act didn't apply to vagrancy. No, it didn't, because if you pay attention, it said right here, okay, any persons who appear to be unemployed or homeless, appearance. So that's, where one of my professors, I remember they said in the book to pretty much highlight that, appeared. Because if you were living in a time where the slaves were just freed and you were black or brown, you appeared to be a vagrant. Okay. And the 1866, pretty much they locked the ball and the chain on your ankle and forced you into involuntary servitude. And that's crazy. And it says, what's the Pregnancy Act of 1866? You funny. I hope it's the Vagrancy Act. Okay. And the Vagrancy Act is pretty much the slavery clause, the enforcement slavery clause of the criminalization clause in the Third Amendment that was actually put into fruition in January of 1865. But then less than a month later, they put in the Vagrancy Act, and it's a slavery clause. And big up to you, Trump 2024. So the Democratic exodus, we will not be voting for Donald Trump, but there's a mass exodus in the Democratic Party, and we will be a third party option. Okay, we'll write in our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, because there has to be a mass exodus, but there's a lot of blacks that's going to be flipping and voting Republican, and I can understand that. But for me, I got to vote win-win and a lifelong Democrat. I can't just flip the script, because I would like to have an educated conversation with Harris if she wins, or Trump. And I want to be on record documented for voting for a third party option, and that's Jesus Christ. And the crazy thing about the mass exodus in the Democratic Party, think about it. The NAACP is not endorsing Harris. The Urban League is not endorsing Harris. The United Negro College Fund is not endorsing Harris. BLM, Black Lives Matters, is not endorsing Harris. Black men are not endorsing Harris. And she did not even endorsement of the largest union in the world, and that's the Teamsters. So when we look at the news and look at TV, it seems, but when they say it's a bloodbath, okay, from a metaphor perspective, it is a bloodbath. And let me see here, Joshua, listen, Jesus is king. So let's write in the king, a name above every name. Because I have these conversations on a daily basis. And when they ask me what name you putting in there, I'm saying I'm putting in Jesus, because as a child, when I learned, the Lord's Prayer, on earth as it is in heaven. So if I want to have on earth as it is in heaven and have a heavenly place here, because the United States is supposed to be tranquil domestically, then I got to write in my Lord and Savior, and whatever happens, happens. And if Trump's in office and something happens bad, we didn't have anything to do with it. If Harris is in office and something happens, we didn't have nothing to do with that. But regardless of the fact, we will be protected, just like putting the lamb's blood over our doors in Egypt days, because when God said, when I smiting Egypt, not if, but when. So when he come down here and do, handle his business here in the world, we want to already be prayed up and make it happen. So LOL, write in Jesus on the ballot. And if you're still there, I'm campaigning. I'm an ambassador for it. Write in Jesus Christ 2024, our only hope. And that's factual. So this is how we separate ourselves, from the enemy. This is how we separate ourselves from the party of slavery, because the party of slavery is asking for our vote when we're still casted as slaves. The Democratic Party is a part of slavery. The Democratic Party is a party of slavery, and they're asking the slaves for their vote. And they have a biracial bed-wenching concubine trying to resonate with the slaves to pretty much prolong or keep slavery into play. This is why in California, Gavin Newsom, the governor, was forced to sign an apology because California has a strong push for reparations. And based on the California legislator, Proposition 6 ends slavery in California and upholds human rights and dignity for everyone. So this is why he had to apologize for it. So now there's an apology, which is an atonement. Now we get an opportunity to vote yes 6 to end slavery in California. And after that, then we can have a conversation, push it past the legislators and put it on the desk of the governor, Gavin, so he can sign the reconciliation. And reconciliation comes with cash payouts. So this is how we do what we need to do. Now, Harris remind me of the black Miami police lieutenant. Harris, exactly. So she reminds me, no pun intended, when I watch a slave movie, the daughter that Massa had when he got one of the slaves pregnant. He loves her. She's biracial. She could pass, the paper bag, she could pass for white and all that. But we know that she's the daughter of a slave and the father of a slave master. Her father is the slave master, and he puts her in a position of power. And then he tries to get her to manipulate the slave and to say that she's going to do something different. But we know without a shadow of a doubt, she represents Massa, her father, and the party of slavery. And back in those days, they called them, bed wenching concubines, the females that Massa would have in the house along with his wife, and he could do anything he wants to do with her. And then, so if she's with him, how can she be with us? And this is why that great poet, Kendrick Lamar, song is pretty much still breaking records. They not like us. And who are they, them, them pronouns. And that's the Democratic Party, which is the party of slavery. And that's crazy. So, man, I appreciate y'all in these comments. So listen, let me see here. LOL, wait, what would actually happen if Jesus write-in won? Then we won. And this is the whole play, because if you understand horse racing, win, place, or show, okay, you would win if his name pops up on election day. He don't even have to win, the top of the ticket. So whoever wins first, whoever comes a second, and that third name will be there. We just want his name to trend on election day so they can understand that we have separated ourselves from the Democratic Party. Okay, that we don't want to be a part of this two-party system. We don't want to be slaves no more. So we pretty much wrote his name in, not only to win, not only to place, but to show on election day, so we can help America become who she truly is. To the republic for which it stands, one nation under God. America is a God-fearing constitutional republic. And republic does not mean Republican Party. It simply means, supreme power. But how can this country be who it's supposed to be if there's two rivaling tribes in an opposition? One's trying to build and one's trying to destroy. One's trying to, get the country to be great again, and the other side is trying to blow its head off. One trying to protect our borders, help our economy, and help inflation. The other side is pretty much saying the same thing, but in the last half to 4 years, they're the catalysts that actually have put the world in a terrible place. And America sets the tone for the world. So if we are in shambles, then you can see how Russia can invade Ukraine. You can see how on October 7th of 2023 would do something like that. And then you can see how Israel will be funded by the United States and actually creating genocide on brown people, the Palestinians. And this is why I could go ahead and put of the support of Harris, or the non-endorsements, the NAACP, the Urban League, the United Negro College Fund, Black Lives Matters, the Black Man. So you could go ahead and put in the Palestinians as well. Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar are pretty much done with the Democratic Party, because if you pay attention, I don't see any major Democrats out there campaigning for, other than celebrities and entertainers. And the celebrities and entertainers that are endorsing her are pretty much using the government to protect themselves, because they are a part of Hollyweird and a part of the tapes, and they just want protection. Because if you don't support and you are a celebrity, you might find yourself in some troubles. But the politicians and the criminal black caucus, they're not out there promoting her. I don't see none of them on television. I don't see none of them having press conferences. I don't see none of them on the campaign. So this is what I'm saying, in mass exodus of the Democratic Party, because it's imploding from within. They know that she's a functioning alcoholic. They're book smart, but very ignorant and can't even have a one-on-one conversation. Then she goes on a media blitz this week. She can't answer a question on 60 Minutes. And then when she goes on The View, they asked her, and they were really passionate with her on The View this week, and it was jaw-dropping. They asked her, they said, is there anything that a part of the Biden administration, you were the VP, that you may have, in terms of separating yourself from Joe Biden, anything that you may have done differently? And she said, nothing comes to mind. And they were sitting back like, wow. And this was The View on ABC. So when I saw that, I was like, let's put our energy, let's go ahead and just, leave this burning house that Dr. King talked about. Let's go ahead and free and liberate ourselves, and let's focus on Proposition 6 and the propositions. And then when it comes to voting, anything but Harris is all right with me. But if you was with Dr. Cornel West or Melina Abdullah, unfortunately, in the state of California, they did not make the ballot. So instead of writing them in, write him in, and him is Jesus Christ. Instead of voting for a libertarian, and instead of voting for the Peace and Freedom Party, instead of voting for the Green Party, instead of voting for the American Independent Party, go ahead. And if you were not going to vote for Trump or Harris, go ahead and let's just come together, create this coalition in plain sight. And then on election day, whatever percentage that our write-in candidate, Jesus Christ, has, this will be the percentage that we will pretty much support all human rights. And from a biblical perspective, it will literally be documented as a modern day remnant, a small group of people who pretty much came together, in solidarity and pretty much changed the world. Okay, because we cannot continue to be documented as slaves. Okay, and if you did not know, and if you just jumped in the state of California, Proposition 6 is on the books, and Proposition 6 ends slavery in California and upholds human rights and dignity for everyone. And the big grand scale of it, or I would say the big picture, aligns with the national reform, the 13th Amendment, meaning we're seeking a constitutional amendment. And the Constitution, as the 13th Amendment, I'm reading this off of congress.gov, neither slavery nor voluntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime. Okay, it reads that the party shall be duly convicted, but that's a lie, because in the 2 weeks after the Emancipation Proclamation in December of 1865, the General Assembly passed a Vagrancy Act of 1866, and the Vagrancy Act of 1866 forced into employment the term of 3 months any person who appeared to be unemployed or homeless. So if you were a newly freed slave, you were just automatically criminalized and had to do 3 months. So now you do 3 months, then what you going to do? You just was a newly freed slave. So then after they released you, you still didn't have nowhere to go. So if the so-called vagrants ran away, meaning if you left their plantation, if you had the desire to go look for your loved ones, if you wanted to look for work, if you wanted to go north, if you wanted to make it to Canada, once they took the ball and chain and you ran away and was recaptured, and I'm reading this off the Vagrancy Act of 1866, documented in the government books, they would be forced into work for no compensation while wearing a ball and chain. So now you ran, so we got to put a ball and chain on your ankle. You can't run with that. Now, let me see here. Now, more formally known as the Act providing for punishment for vagrants. The law came shortly after the Civil War, which was from 1861 to 1865. Check this out. When hundreds of thousands of African Americans, many of them just freed from slavery, wandered in search of work and displaced family members. Think about that. That's on the Constitution today. And Proposition 6 in 2024 ends slavery in California and upholds human rights and dignity for everyone. So we are living in a strange time right now, but this is going to be historical, Because if we can pull this thing off, if we can rally behind our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, if we could rally behind one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, we can actually change the game and create one race, and that's the human race. Because as long as these bills are on the book, the slavery clause in the Constitution, the Vagrancy Act of 1866, as long as these things are on the books, we're going to have racism. And racism is profitable because according to the racism, 6 out of 10 black men find themselves behind bars. Those are the statistics. And then, like I said, I'm going to do a deep dive in the Kerner Commission and the Kerner Report. And that's pretty much talking about white supremacy on how they created the ghettos and the barrios. And to let you know that this is a factual situation till today, the Democratic Party's running around saying that, overall crime is down. It is on a national perspective, but in all the Democratic mayors, all the Democratic cities across the United States, it's up plus 200%. And if you were to look up, and I looked it up the other day just to be sure, the top 20 worst cities in America when it comes to crime, 18 of them are Democratic. Las Vegas is on it. I think they're about 15, 16, but that's an independent state. And then Stockton, California, is on it, which was in the top 5, but now it's in there, but it just flipped to a Republican. So when they say crime is down, only in Republican states, in cities, only in the red cities, but in the blue cities, it's at an all-time, because in these blue cities, these are the places where they're sending the migrants. These are places where, they're sanctuary cities. These are the places where, they have on the books in terms of no cash bail and bringing down in terms of Prop 47 to where if you stole something under $1,000 that you can't even say or do anything. So now when you go in and try to get you some coffee here in South Los Angeles, you're going to have to hit a button and somebody comes out and unlock the coffee drawer. Then you go to Target and you want to get some underwear and some T-shirts, and some body wash. They got to call somebody because of the crime. So if crime was down, then what's going on with all these smash and grabs? What's going on with all these home invasions? What's going on with all of these things? So this is why we can't be hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, because they want us to continue to run amok. And this is why God is elevating a group of people to be conscious and to raise their vibration and weed through, the personalities and weed through all of that, because it's not flesh and blood, it's powers, principalities. Because when, the group that I'm associated with spoke to Harris, and she basically made it clear. She says there's only 2 types of supporters. She says there's voters and those that cut checks. And she did like this. So my hands are tied. So basically, she has to do what her donors, she has to do what her constituents or the people who's funding her campaign say do. When they talk about raising the rich, raising taxes on the rich and all of that, those are just talking points. And then you will see, black men on these commercials, I'm not rich, she's going to make them pay their fair share. That is a lie. That is a bald-faced lie, because those tax breaks and, those loopholes that the ultra and mega rich, use, the Democrats use it as well. But they're okay with her saying that because they could be hiding in plain sight. But that's not true. So at the end of the day, we're still slaves, and slavery is legal in the United States and California. The fearless Gavin Newsom, the governor, who's a whistleblower, Lori Wilson, who pretty much put the bill into play, Proposition 6 ends slavery in California. And that is a whistle to let the world know and let the United States know that we're still slaves. And they want to basically, if we do pass it, then it aligns up to amend the 13th Amendment, which reads neither slavery nor voluntary servitude, unless as a punishment of a crime. We could take that's the criminalization clause, because just 2 weeks after the Emancipation Proclamation, the 13th Amendment was created. The Vagrancy Act of 1866 passed the General Assembly on January 15th in 1866, and it forced into slavery, involuntary servitude, to anybody that appeared to be unemployed or homeless. Appearance, newly freed slave. That go a slave right there. Okay. Unemployed. We just got free 2 weeks ago. We're unemployed and we're homeless because we are looking for our family members. We're searching work. So what happens if the so-called vagrants ran away and were recaptured? They will be forced into work cessation, and it's right here in the documentation in the Vagrancy Act of 1866, while wearing a ball and chain. Wow, that's crazy. And this is how the South was rebuilt on 100% free labor. This is crazy. Let me see here. I'm in these comments. Let me hear. We live in a perfect world if we all let Jesus rule. Exactly. And as an ambassador for Christ, I could only offer you that, because when I look at the word, Jesus didn't support the scribes or the Pharisees, which is today's Democrats and Republicans. He pretty much came to fulfill. And when he came and sacrificed his blood, and he paid the cost and the ransom for us. And now we have to stand in the gap between these two rivaling tribes to make sure they do what's right. Because I'd rather be a judge in a courtroom instead of the prosecutor or the defense attorney or the people that's sitting in the jury box. So we are the remnant. We get an opportunity to go down in history and do what we need to do. Let me see here. Also, Harris is some sort of Jezebel and slave master's house concubine. That's deep. Who would ever thought that? After learning she was dating Willie Brown, I forgot about her white husband. She was dating Willie Brown. Montel Williams brought her on the scene. She's a bedwetching concubine, and there's females that got gag orders that have spoken behind the scene and said she pretty much slept her way to the top. Think about it. And she's a functioning alcoholic. So this is why she be kooky and kiki and all of that. So allegedly, okay, I don't want to, get in some sort of trouble, but yeah. Let me see here. Good morning to you. Hi, sir. Back at you. Hi, ma'am. I'm not sure. Grand Turco. Let me see here. But I mean, legally, what would happen if we write in and Jesus won? If Jesus won, if we wrote Jesus in and he won, then that means that Jesus will be documented as the president of the United States, and we the people will be in charge, and we will pretty much force checks and balances to do their job, which is the House of Congress, the Senate, and the congressional part of the House or the congressional chamber, as well as the Supreme Court. So if he won, hypothetically, then that means the Constitution says we the people, and America will not be a democracy anymore. It will be a constitutional republic, because we will have to rely on the Constitution, and we will pretty much have to rely on the Supreme Court to make sure and put these mandates and laws. Because right now, Jesus Christ is not president, but we got a lame duck president, or empty suit in the sense of the president right now, and Joe Biden. I can't find Joe Biden unless I try to find him. Okay. So he's an empty suit. He's a lame duck. So we're literally operating in Jesus Christ right now, but it will force the checks and balances to take over or to be in play. And they will pretty much be governed by the people. And that's what democracy truly means. Okay, governed by the people, because it says our Constitution says we the people. So now we pretty much will have legislation and put things into play that we will support and vote for. And instead of them arguing and debating it, it will be what the people want and how do they want it. So I would love for that to happen. So please write his name in, because I can only offer you Jesus Christ as a candidate, as a write-in, because I can't, these scribes and Pharisees, and basically learning the fact that the Democrats is the party of slavery. And in 2024 in California, Proposition 6 ends slavery in California and upholds human rights and dignity for everyone. So there's no way I can, as a slave, I'm not going to vote for my slave master. This is a slave revolt. And this is an opportunity that our ancestors did not have, because if they were just walking around as vagrants, the Vagrancy Act of 1866, they pretty much put a ball and chain on them, according to the documentation, forced to work for no compensation while wearing a ball and chain, which is slavery. And that's crazy. But we have an opportunity. They can't do anything to us, because we're practicing our freedom of speech, our first constitutional right, freedom of speech, and we're being honest, and we're coming with receipts. And the documentation that I'm looking at, this is their documentation. I'm getting this stuff off of their website. And this is a little paper, the Freedom Bureau, okay, which was created when Abraham Lincoln pretty much ended slavery, he came up with the Freedmen's Bank, and it was called the Freedmen's Bank Bureau. And once he was assassinated, they named Otis Howard the commissioner of it. But Otis Howard, they pretty much gave him Howard University. And a lot of people, even that goes to Howard, don't know that's how Howard University became Howard University, because they went and created a black college and they named it after Otis Howard, who was the commissioner commissioned by Abraham Lincoln to lead the freedmen, which was $8 million in 1865 to pretty much support and to some type of atonement or reconciliation for the newly freed slave, to buy homes, to purchase businesses, so we can actually weed ourselves out of this slavery condition. But due to the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, the of 1866, which was just 2 weeks after, they pretty much recaptured everybody, forced them into work for no compensation, wearing a ball and chain. And that's crazy. And I appreciate it, because when iron sharpens iron, okay? And Willie Lynch said it himself, run this for hundreds, if not thousands of years, but unless a phenomenon happened, and the phenomenon is the internet. And if you think about the African Americans, just like with Juneteenth, they pretty much a year and a half, 2 years, they were slaves in Texas until some of the newly freed Buffalo Soldiers, or I would say the blacks from the Black Regiment, went through Texas, and they were still blacks being enslaved. And they pretty much challenged the slave masters. And the slave masters literally said, it's in the newspaper that they've been free. But think about it. They didn't let us read. It was against the law for blacks to read. So you keep them dumbfounded. So this is why we have to exercise our constitutional right, go into that ballot box, vote yes on 6 to end slavery, not only in California, but to align with the national efforts to pretty much amend the 13th Amendment and take the criminalization clause, because the criminalization clause is supported by the Vagrancy Act of 1866, and pretty much would force individuals that was newly freed into work with no compensation while wearing a ball and chain. And this is crazy. And this is crazy. Please, brother, please. And I believe that's saying, please, brother, please keep preaching the truth. Keep teaching the truth, because the truth shall make us free. Yeah, Kamala Harris can't think of anything to do different, disappointed with the demos. Yes, she can't. So at the end of the day, it's time to basically just, let go and let God. Now, I have these conversations. I be speaking to women, and a lot of women say, writing in Jesus Christ, you just throwing your vote away. And I'm sitting back and I would say, excuse me, ma'am, how long you been married? Oh, I've been married for 36 years. And, I'm old enough to be your grandmother. You got somebody else. And I'm sitting back saying, as a man with a good energy and a good vibration, I'm literally single. Okay. And it's beautiful. So I don't have to worry about none of that. Okay. So when it's time for me to court my wife, or time for me to get married, okay, I'm setting principles and things beforehand, and safety and guardrails to make sure that we do this thing beautifully. But in the midst of, I had to make a decision and say, I don't want to be in a relationship, because it just continues to, drain my energy. I got, problem after problem. So being single sometimes is beautiful. So if you look at politics as a relationship, you got the Democrats and Republicans trying to be with you. If you make a decision and say, you know what, I'm going to be single politically, that means independent. Okay. That means no matter what happens, you're still going to be happy. You're still going to have a smile on your face. No matter what happens, you're still going to be protected and covered by the blood of God either way. But it feels good to not be associated with something that's going to destroy you. It feels good to not be associated with something that, if happenstance happened, if something bad were to happen, if you voted Republican and something bad happened, you will feel a sense of responsibility because you supported that. And vice versa with the Democratic side. If something bad happens, you will feel like you had something to do with it. You supported it. Okay. But if you choose Jesus, if you choose to basically write in, go to the bottom, write his name in, if something bad happens, it had nothing to do with you. You're documented that you didn't support it. And when the Bible says, I will punish the oppressors, that means you don't get punished with them. Think about it, because it's the demons and the bad actors They love to associate themselves with good people. And they associate themselves with good people for a reason, because when, bad actors and demons associate themselves with good people, that's their protection. So this is why we as God-fearing individuals need to separate ourselves from these bad entities. We need to separate ourselves from these fleshly organizations. We need to separate ourselves whose history is dark. Because when you talk about the Vagrancy Act of 1866, that's democratic. When you talk about Proposition 6 in California to pretty much end slavery in California, that's a fact that nothing has changed. Abraham Lincoln emancipated the slave. Yes, he did. But it all went into the Christian system. And this is how we have, crime in these ghettos. Pretty much, profitable to have a group of people committing crimes because they go to jail. And when they go, the prison stocks rise. It's crazy that we have these slavery clauses in the Constitution, the Vagrancy Act of 1866 and Proposition 6 and all of that. It's crazy how it all follows and goes down to being profitable. Follow the money. Just all you got to do is just follow the money. And in 2024, we get an opportunity to do what's right. And that's crazy. We get an opportunity to do what's right. And I'm back in these comments. Now, Biden is also sort of sabotaging her, challenging her, stealing her thunder, etc. Well, Biden is, like I said, he knows time's up. OK, and I believe when they missed Trump, when they was pretty much trying to blow his head off, that's when they basically said, OK, we missed. And we can't stop the train because all of these things are coming out. Because on the Republican side, let's be honest, Trump's a rock star. Trump rallies every day. He's leading in the polls. They're basically saying that he may win the popular vote as well as the electoral college, which would be the first time in a long time. And then there's a mass exodus in the Democratic Party and in these cities because these migrants are pretty much coming into these black communities or in these communities of color, and pretty much kind of deemed as the replacements, because Joe Biden Chuck Schumer is on record basically saying we need to get these migrants in. We need to distribute them around the country because we need to, literally redline these humans. And pretty much it's kind of like human trafficking. If you look at what's going on with Puffy, if some migrants come to the United States of America in the border, and then you put them on buses and then you distribute them all around the country, that's human trafficking. There's a human ticker of saying that there's approximately 300,000 children that has been lost in the system, nowhere to be found. Hopefully they made it to where they needed to make it and they're with their family members, but they're not documented. So when you talk about human trafficking and things like that, they're using, humans, the slaves, criminalize them, Puffy, to make it seem like, he's the one that's doing human trafficking. But the United States of America as a whole is busing people around the country. The Department of Homeland Security earmarked $380 million and pretty much told the cities that would be willing to house them that they can actually, get some money from the slush fund. And Los Angeles stepped up, and Karen Bass, I would say, received $21.8 million to house migrants. And there's videos where they're walking around Skid Row, talking to people and just, pulling them out of a desolate situation and bypassing the individuals that's been on Skid Row for years because they got $21.8 million to house the migrants. So is that not human trafficking? Jump on this bus. We'll take you to Springfield, Ohio. Springfield, Ohio, a lily white town of 60, small Midwestern, upper Midwest town. And then you bring in 20,000 Haitians to disrupt their way of life. Think about that. Is that not human trafficking? So we be associated with this. There's a term called guilty by association. So as a brother, as a friend, and as a human being who's practicing, and loving humanity, we have to be honest with you and pretty much help you, because clearly our elected officials are not trying to help us. They're just helping their donors, but they're literally the catalyst to basically end the world. But if we want to have on earth as it is in heaven, I don't think writing in our Lord and Savior on the ballot is out the question. Because like I said, I love to study the book of Matthew. And when they came at Jesus and said, who's better, the scribe or the Pharisees, he didn't pretty much pick one. He said, I came to fulfill. I didn't come to change the scribe or the Pharisees, but he also said, and I need you to listen to this. He also said, if the scribes and Pharisees have more righteousness than my people who are called by my name, my people surely will not see the kingdom of heaven. So this is an Exodus. This is no different than, the book of Exodus. This is no different than the days of Moses, because the days of Moses, yes, they left slavery and under Pharaoh's regime, but they went into the wilderness, and this is where they all died. Okay, because they got comfortable in the. So when you sit back and talk to an elder or a baby boomer, and they sit and say, no, we got to get Trump out of there, and we's got it good here, they have gotten comfortable in the wilderness, and they're trying to deliver us and have us in the wilderness, and we are rejecting it, because our spirit, because every time you look at the horizon, there's something over that mountain. There's something beautiful over there. So now it's time for us to pack up and walk away from the Democratic Party. And I can only say this because the community that I live in, where I come from, as a registered Democrat, that's all I know. I don't know no Republicans. I don't know no MAGAs, none of that. So all I'm saying is what we're doing right now, we need to make a move and not support the system, not support their democracy, and let them know that, yes, we're voting yes on Prop 6. Let them know, like, why you guys are not having this conversation about Prop 6, because Prop 6 ends slavery in California, and that's on the ballot in 2024. So that would actually have to show you, and they would have to expose the party of slavery that they support and supporting for 160 years. And that's crazy. So this is crazy. Let me see here. I got some bold writing. Grand Torso. I don't know, who will be elected president, but our money is losing value because of the dollar. I want a solution to be found for this, please. And the solution is, number one, okay, yes on Prop 6 to end slavery in the United States. That's number one. Number two is we got to go ahead and continue to push to align up with the national and the Constitution, which ends racism in the United States, and then in the Democratic Party as a whole, so we could be a Democrat, so we could be a constitutional republic. So just think about it, and I'm gonna be totally honest with you, Grand Turco. I'm gonna be totally honest with you. When the Republicans, the capitalists, are in play, they help the American people make money. Think about it. So in a sense of abandoning the Democratic Party will allow the Republicans to do what they do. Republicans is less government, less taxes. Capital gains tax under Donald Trump was earmarked to go to just 20%. Right now, capital gains tax is pretty much 48%, just rounded up to 50%. So if you pretty much got $1 million, you pretty much go ahead and you're paying half of that. And then if you look at the tax code, the only way we can switch this game up is to be we the people and to help the people. This is why, if we can actually free ourselves from slavery and vote yes on 6, then we can have a conversation about abolishing payroll taxes. Meaning, if you have a 9 to 5, that will give you literally a 20% raise. And how they will make their money, that's democracy. We'll pretty much add it in consumption. In the state of California, and this is a fact, we voted for a 2-cent tax on Measure M for Metro, and they raised over $600 million in less than 2 years. So if we were to raise retail tax by a 0.5 cent, 2 cent, 3 cent, abolish payroll taxes, that will help the American people. Just imagine all the time that you put into the overtime and your federal, your payroll taxes is not getting taxed. Just imagine how much you would have to spend, how much you would have to save. And this is why we cannot continue to practice their democracy, because we have to work and understand what works for the common American and the people. Because here in America, the working class and the middle class pretty much suffers. Okay, because the working class and the middle class is going to continue to pay bills, it's going to continue to work. going to continue to eat, continue to put gas in their cars, no matter how high it is. But it is affecting us the most because what we used to do, we don't have those financial reserves, for the vacation. We don't have the financial reserves to pretty much go purchase things that we want to purchase. We just learned how to rob Peter and pay Paul. But when we, as a people, if we can develop a coalition outside of the two-party system, then and embrace the Constitution and be constitutional and allow America to be a constitutional republic, then we can have conversations by the people. And if we can do that, our pocketbooks will be amazing. The dollar will be strong, because if we sit back and continue to work with this duopoly, the Democratic Party, who's tied into foreign nationals, tied into globalism, who's tied into Zionism, who's tied into all of these, this one world order, one rule, one world, and all of that, then this is why their job is to bring America down. So when I used to hear Trump, Venezuela was thriving, and then now it's crashed, these are foreign individuals that are strategically placed here in America as foreign nationals, invested in a Democratic Party to actually end the United States of America. That's fact. So this is why in these last days, we're getting, some things put in play in plain sight, like Proposition 6 to end slavery in California, because slavery has been profitable for 160 years. And if you did not know, and I can only speak for the state of California because I've studied it and taken a deep dive in it, the federal prisons get approximately $114,000 per prisoner. In the LA or the Los Angeles Unified School District, they only get $13,000 to educate. So think about that. And then if you look at Proposition 6, end slavery in California, then that means if we can end slavery in California, then we can actually flip the script and invest more in education, because if you got a strong, sound education and you're reading, on your grade level, by the time you get to the third, fourth grade, then you are on a trajectory to not go to prison. But if they continue to dumb us down and continue to have these terrible public school systems, they call that the prison pipeline system, because you go from high school to prison, okay? From high school to prison, even if you make it that far. Okay, because if you're not educated, more than likely the statistics say that you're literally going to wind up in somebody's prison. And that's a fact. And based on the data, and we got to do something about it, 6 out of 10 black men find themselves behind bars on the city, state, or municipal level. And that's a fact. So the only way we can do this is if we liberate ourselves and free ourselves from the Democratic Party, let them know that we're not going to take it anymore. And this is why there's a mass exodus in the party. This is why the NAACP is not supporting the Democratic Party. This is why the United Negro College Fund is not supporting the Democratic Party. Black Lives Matters pretty much got robbed of their whole brand, and now they're not supporting the Democratic Party. Black men, been out of the Democratic Party because most of the party or the individuals that's with the Democratic Party are members of the LGBTQ community, as well as, beta males, men that stand behind their women, and they really are afraid to have real men conversation. So our Andrews, slavery is legal. There goes the legitimacy of the live stream. Slavery is legal. Okay. Slavery is legal. I'm gonna break it down for you. Let me see here. And this is off of the government, Congress.gov, the 13th Amendment. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude except as punishment for a crime. Think about that. Except for punishment as a crime. And that went into effect in December of 1865. But just 2 weeks later, the Vagrancy Act of 1866, passed by the General Assembly on January 15th, 1866, forced into employment to any person who appeared to be unemployed or homeless. So if you just read the slaves, you're black, that's your appearance, you're unemployed, and you're homeless, because the vagrants were pretty much wandering. Okay. Hundreds of thousands of African Americans, many of them just freed, wandered in search of work, and displaced family members were pretty much rounded up. And according to the Vagrancy Act of 1866, were forced into work without compensation while wearing a ball and chain. While wearing a ball and chain. So the blind can't lead the blind anymore. Okay. God, knowledge is the first gift that God gives us. Knowledge is power, and God's people shall not perish due to the lack of knowledge. And this is why they have individuals walking around who are uneducated and really don't know the truth, operating and supporting a system that pretty much continues to, destroy a people. This is why Planned Parenthood, 75% of the babies aborted are black. This is why when you talk about the prison systems, 60% of the prisoners in the global, 60% are actually black, and we're only 6% of the United States. Think about that. Think about that. That's crazy. So when people sit back and say, things that they don't know, I would prefer that they would ask a question, because what they do is expose themselves, because slavery is legal. If slavery wasn't legal, Anders, I'm speaking to Anders, make sure you hit that subscription so you can be educated. If slavery wasn't legal, then why in California on the tour ballot, Proposition 6 ends slavery in California and upholds human rights and dignity for everyone? So if you're in California, vote yes on 6. Okay, that is crazy. Yeah, and they got him in the comment, like I said. And then see, like I see here, Anders, okay, now he's upset. You're not a slave. You're just ignorant. Nah, based on the books, brother, I'm a slave. And if you black, you a slave. Your mama a slave. All y'all, if you black. And the only way we can fix this, and if you're in the state of California, is vote yes on Proposition 6, because Proposition 6 ends slavery in California and upholds human rights, and it aligns with the national effort to reform the 13th Amendment. And the 13th Amendment says neither slavery nor involuntary servitude except for punishment as a crime. And that was signed into law in 1865. But in 1866, less than 2 weeks later, the Vagrancy Act of 1866 passed the General Assembly on January 15 and forced into employment with no compensation while wearing a ball and chain to individuals that appeared to be homeless, unemployed, and who appeared to be unemployed or homeless. So we were just freed from slavery last month. And now we're looking for our wives and looking for our family members, because according to the website, the Vagrancy Act of 1866, more formally known as the Act providing for the punishment of vagrants, the law came shortly into effect after the American Civil War in 1861 and 1865, when hundreds of thousands of Africans, many of them just freed, wandered in search of work and displaced family members. Think about that. And they were pretty much forced into work with no compensation while wearing a ball and chain. And California decided to go ahead and try to get it up under the rug, put it on the ballot. Okay. And Proposition 6 ends slavery, California, and upholds human rights and dignity for everyone. So yes, I'm a slave. You a slave, bruh. Foundation of life is God, is put God first. And like I said, and if that's the case, then we got to write God in for president. Okay. We cannot reward the party of slavery 160 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, because it's the Democratic Party who put in those vagrancy laws so they can actually force us to rebuild the South on free labor. So I appreciate y'all. Let me see here. Let me see. This is real life. Speaking facts. Absolutely. Okay. Somebody went in and thank you, YouTube. They're blocking those comments. So Kamala likes the border like she likes her. Yeah. Bed, wench, and concubine. Screwed her way to the top. Real talk. Louisiana in the building. No, I'm from California, born and raised, Los Angeles. Let me see here. Oh, men actually love to support their women. Okay, here. So listen. I see the subscriptions bouncing up, so it's not going to cost you anything. If y'all in the room, hit the subscription, hit the notification, because I got some good stuff coming down the road, because God's people shall not perish due to the lack of knowledge. And I pretty much do things that I don't see but that resonated in my spirit. And let me see here, Mr. Man, there is no mass exodus. And Mr. Man, there is a mass exodus. The NAACP is not supporting the Democratic Party. The Urban League is not endorsing the Democratic Party. The the United Negro College Fund is not endorsing the Democratic Party. BLM, Black Lives Matters, is not endorsing the Democratic Party. And the largest union known to man, the Teamsters, is not endorsing the Democratic Party. And more importantly, black men as a whole are not endorsing the Democratic Party. So there is a mass exodus. So if you still on, make sure you vote yes on Prop 6, because if you don't vote yes on Prop 6, you will still be a slave on November 6th. Real talk. Let me see here. And I appreciate the love my black conversations. Like I said, this is a Better Black America TV. And my thing is a Better Black America talk radio show, all of this things blackness, but it's a social and economic situation, because black is an acronym that I've created in the Latin, Asian, Caucasian kinship, meaning we're all together. But this is the first time that we get an opportunity to speak. So based on what we're learning today is that the slaves conversation has been, put on the back burner. So now the slaves get to speak on it while delivering themselves from evil, which is the Democratic Party. And when we liberate ourselves and vote yes on Proposition 6 and it ends slavery in California, and then we can actually push for a constitutional amendment on the 13th Amendment. So now we go from slaves to humanitarian efforts, because without a shadow of a doubt, we love everybody. And if we get it together, we're not finna let nobody be hungry. If we got bread, if we, do something about crime and do something about poverty and, get our communities together, the world would be a better place. We're going to just make sure it happens. What's happening, bro? Let me see here. And you're from Afghanistan. What's up, Mario? How you doing? Okay, I appreciate y'all, man. Let me see. I'm not black, but I can still watch. Absolutely. Black, Latin, Asian, Caucasian kinmen. If you did not know, based on Dr. Leakey, allegedly, from an educational perspective, the all creator of humanity was found on the continent of Africa. And the oldest fossils, approximately, 0.3 million years ago, was Lucy on the peninsula of Africa. Okay. And all humanity came from that. So this is why you have the whites and the Asians who want to pretty much work together to destroy a major group of people, because if they can control us, then they can, have their wealth and profit and do all of these things. But this is why we're making push, because now this is our opportunity to move forward as a people. And once we get it together, there will be no racism. It will be one race, the human race. America can be one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for everybody. Yeah, I'm brown when it comes to my skin tone, but in terms of race, I'm documented as a Negro. Okay. And based on me being documented as a Negro, whites came up with, they call themselves white. Okay. So the opposite of white is black. So as an American here in the United States, I'm documented as a black American. And I know black is just a color, but in terms of, if you look at the color chart, to make the color black, you need every color on the color chart except white. Okay. Because if you put white with all the colors, you'll make gray. Okay, so from a color sense, this is why they call the deeply melanated people here in the world black. And then they call the ones that has no melanation in their system white. And then the Latinos are brown because they have the shade. And then they call the Asians yellow. And then they call, the Native Americans red. And it could go on and on and on and on and on. So it's all good. Now, we're all people, different strokes, for different folks, different shades. You are absolutely right. But here, being in these United States, I come from a culture where we classify ourselves as black, because James Brown had a song, "Say It Loud, I'm black and I'm proud." And then my father was a Panther out of Watts, okay, California, and they were Black Panthers, okay. So this is why we have taken on, we're Negro, based on my birth certificate. My parents say colored, my son and daughter says African American. But at the end of the day, this it has nothing to do with, a debate or anything like that. It's just that we're the deeply melanated human beings on the planet. And that's just how it's documented. But at the end of the day, it's only one race. That's the human race. But you got to understand, certain human beings that's not black that classify themselves as white were very brute. And then if you look at the framers of this nation, they were very harsh on the transatlantic slave. And pretty much to this day, we're still documented as their slave. Because if you look at the Constitution, neither slavery nor voluntary servitude, except punishment of a crime. And then 2 weeks after that, they passed the Vagrancy Act of 1866 on January 15th in 1866, and forced into employment the newly freed slaves. Okay, when hundreds of thousands of African Americans, many of them just freed, wandered in search of work and were displaced and displaced family members, they were pretty much forced into work with no compensation while wearing a ball and chain. And those are white folks, white supremacy, white power. Okay, so this is why we got to stand on our blackness, because black is everything but white. But it's no disrespect to them. But it's just a situation where we got to figure this out as some human beings. And it is what it is. And blacks and white must unite. So Thomas Woods, if I had a prize for you, I'll get that to you, because we got to come together, and it has to be on a moral level, and more importantly, on a spiritual level. Because Jesus didn't come to change the scribes and Pharisees. Jesus talked about Jews and Gentiles. Okay, everybody. So you are 100% right. But there's no way we can actually come together as black and white if there are slavery clauses on the Constitution, if slavery is still legal in California, because Gavin Newsom, was with the reparations coalition, but had to pretty much shelf the bill and forced it to not be voted on the legislative floor in California, because based on the documentation, we're still slaves in California. So Prop 6 in California ends slavery and upholds human rights and dignity for everyone. So now we got to vote yes on 6 so whites and blacks can come together, because up until now, we're still slaves. And based on the Constitution, 13th Amendment needs slavery nor involuntary servitude except punishment of a crime. And they pretty much criminalized us 2 weeks later with the Vagrancy Act of 1866, which forced into employment with no compensation while wearing a ball and chain to hundreds of thousands of African Americans, many of them just freed and were wandering in search of work, and displaced family members. So it's still a fact. So we must unite, and we must do that. So yes on 6 to end it. So with that being said, if you have not hit the subscription, hit the notification, because we're going to keep on educating and basically seek the truth, because according to the Bible, in terms of the documents that I read, the truth shall make us free, and God's people will not perish due to the lack of knowledge. So if you just tapped in, I see a few people still on, go ahead and rewatch it. It's a lot of interesting. So spread the news. Blacks are still slaves in these United States because of the Vagrancy Act of 1866, the criminalization clause in the Constitution, and according to Proposition 6 in California, Proposition 6 ends slavery in California and upholds human rights and dignity for everyone. So with that being said, hey, Jesus didn't come to change the scribe of Pharisees. He came to fulfill. And so on election day, to pretty much abandon the burning house, the mass exodus of the Democratic Party, we won't be flipping Republican. We're going to be writing in our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, as a write-in candidate, and yes on 6 to end slavery in California, with the effort to get a constitutional amendment on the national level. So with that being said, have a great day. This is your man, Bushan Glover, tapping out. A Better Black America TV on YouTube. Peace out.